Some stories don't begin with a scream. They begin with silence. A silence so heavy it follows you into adulthood. A silence that rewrites how you see yourself. A silence that convinces you, slowly, cruelly, that love is conditional. This is one of those stories. For 16 years, I carried a truth that was never mine to carry. A story whispered behind closed doors, distorted by adults, and pinned onto a child who didn't yet understand how power works, or how easily innocence can be rewritten when it becomes inconvenient. I was 16, a child, and somewhere along the way, members of my own family decided that I had done something I did not do. They believed I had crossed a line with an adult partner in the family, a belief that makes no sense when you stop and think about it, because if that belief were true, it wouldn't make me the villain. It would make me the victim. But logic doesn't survive in families that run on denial. At first, there was concern, sympathy, soft voices. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." For a moment, I felt safe. And then time passed. And the story changed. The assumption that I was a child who needed protection slowly twisted into something darker, something uglier. Suddenly, the question was what happened to me. It was what did I do? And just like that, love was withdrawn. Phone calls stopped, invitations disappeared, side eyes replaced hugs. An aunt stopped speaking to me altogether. No explanation. No conversation. Just distance. That kind of rejection doesn't just hurt. It reshapes you. It teaches you that your worth is fragile, that belonging can be revoked, that silence is safer than truth. For years, I told myself not to talk about it, not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much, because I didn't want to hurt anyone, because I didn't want to be blamed for reopening wounds I never caused, and because my family made it very clear. Some stories are not allowed to be told. Therapy eventually forced me to confront something I'd been avoiding my entire life. That the pain I carried wasn't just about what happened, it was about what didn't happen afterward. No protection. No accountability. No voice. I learned that how I survived back then, freezing, shrinking, staying quiet, wasn't weakness. It was adaptation. A child doing the best she could in an environment that failed her. And the most devastating realization of all, I never should have been put in that position. Not once. Not ever. Yet here I was, 16 years later, still carrying the consequences. Still feeling unworthy. Still questioning whether I deserved love. Still haunted by a lie that wasn't mine, but cost me everything. And this wasn't just my story. This was about every person who was underage when something inappropriate, confusing, or abusive happened, and then grew up being blamed for surviving it. This was about families that protect reputations instead of children. About silence disguised as keeping the peace. About how trauma doesn't disappear just because no one talks about it. And just when I thought this story couldn't get heavier, I realized mine wasn't the only voice that had been buried. Because while I was struggling to understand my own past, another family, one the public thought they knew, was quietly unraveling under the weight of the same kind of silence. A famous family, a powerful matriarch, and daughters who had been told, again and again, to stay quiet. What came next would expose a system far bigger than one accusation, and prove that silence, when enforced long enough, always finds a way to explode. Silence doesn't just happen. It's taught. It's enforced. And in some families, it becomes law. As I grew older, the weight of being misunderstood didn't lift. It hardened. What once felt like confusion turned into something more deliberate. I began to see how silence was being used, not as protection, but as control. If I spoke, I risked losing what little connection I still had. If I stayed quiet, I lost myself. Around this time, I left the country, not because I wanted to run, but because I needed to breathe. Distance became survival. Europe gave me space to exist without the constant reminder that my presence made people uncomfortable. And in therapy, the truth surfaced slowly. The shame I carried was never mine. The responsibility was never mine. The silence was never meant to heal me. It was meant to protect others. That's when I started paying attention to stories beyond my own. Stories that mirrored mine in ways that were impossible to ignore. Stories like Ashlee and Tamar Braxton. To the public, the Braxton family was faith, unity, and legacy. But behind the cameras, 2 daughters were being systematically silenced by the very person who claimed to protect them. Their mother didn't just discourage speaking out, she weaponized loyalty, used religion as leverage, turned motherhood into a moral shield. You're being disrespectful. You'll ruin the family. God doesn't honor daughters who speak like this. Those words cut deeper than any punishment. Ashlee learned early that her truth didn't fit the image. Every time she tried to speak, she was reminded of what she owed. Her place was clear, background, quiet, compliant. Tamar, known for her voice, her fire, was silenced differently. Her emotions were labeled too much. Her pain dismissed as drama. When she needed compassion most, she was met with scripture instead of support. Silence wasn't suggested. It was demanded. And when Ashlee prepared to speak publicly about generational trauma, she received a warning that changed everything. If you talk, don't come back. That's not parenting. That's exile. It became clear this wasn't about healing. It was about maintaining a narrative. Just like in my own life, truth was treated as a threat. Speaking wasn't seen as courage, it was seen as betrayal. And when leaked recordings surfaced, voices cold, controlled, and unmistakably clear, the illusion shattered. The public finally heard what had been hidden for decades. Silence wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of accountability. Fear of exposure. Fear of losing control. The internet reacted instantly. But behind the headlines were years of damage, missed opportunities, emotional isolation, internalized shame. Ashlee had tried to write her story once. It was shut down. Tamar had tried to leave the system. She was guilted into staying. Just like me, they learned that survival often means disappearing. But something had changed. This time, they weren't alone. They had each other. And when survivors stop whispering and start standing together, the system that silenced them begins to crack. The truth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it leaks. A recording. A message. A journal entry never meant for the public. And suddenly, decades of silence collapse in seconds. When Ashlee and Tamar released proof, handwritten notes, old messages, recorded warnings, the narrative changed permanently. This wasn't speculation. This was documentation. The most haunting line. Silence was safety, but I've never felt more unsafe. That sentence echoed through thousands of survivor stories online, because so many people recognized it instantly. Silence protects systems, not people. As more evidence surfaced, it became clear that control wasn't just emotional or spiritual. It was financial, contractual, carefully engineered. Opportunities were blocked, stories edited, pain removed from the screen to preserve a brand. Ashlee wasn't erased accidentally. Tamar wasn't cut off by coincidence. This was strategy. And as the public rewatched old footage with new eyes, moments once dismissed as strict parenting took on darker meaning. Interruptions, dismissals, commands to represent the family. The mask slipped. Meanwhile, the rest of the family stayed quiet. That silence spoke volumes. Because when truth finally comes out, neutrality becomes complicity. For me, watching this unfold felt like watching my own past replayed on a larger stage. Different names, same tactics, same outcome. Children blamed. Adults protected. Truth punished. But this time, something unprecedented happened. The public believed them. Survivors spoke up in waves. Therapists weighed in. The language of trauma replaced the language of gossip. And for the first time, the question shifted from, why didn't they stay quiet, to, why were they forced to? That shift changes everything. Because when society stops asking survivors to be silent, the power finally moves. The final blow wasn't dramatic. It was undeniable. A sworn affidavit confirmed what survivors had been saying all along. Help was discouraged. Healing was blocked. Silence was enforced. Not for love. Not for faith. But for control. And with that confirmation, the story stopped being about one family, one accusation, or one matriarch. It became about a pattern. About how many children grow up believing their pain is inconvenient. About how many adults are still undoing damage they didn't cause. About how silence gets mistaken for strength. Ashlee and Tamar didn't celebrate exposure. They chose something harder. Closure. They refused clout, refused spectacle, refused to let their truth be consumed as entertainment. Because healing isn't loud for attention, it's loud for freedom. For me, telling my story now isn't about blame. It's about reclaiming my voice, about reminding that 16-year-old version of myself that she was never wrong, never dirty, never responsible for what adults failed to handle. If you've ever been told to stay quiet for the sake of family, if you've ever been blamed for surviving, if you've ever confused silence with loyalty, this story is for you. The truth doesn't destroy families. Silence does. And once you speak, once you heal loudly, no one gets to rewrite you again.